Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a first look at the brand new JADE Ethnic Orchestra. So this is a brand new library, actually released today on May 11th, 2020. This is a brand new library from Strezov Sampling, which is a new partnership that I recently developed. Great people over there. I'm really excited to start diving into some of their libraries. I've heard some of you guys mention that I should strongly check out some of their stuff, and I'm really excited to do that. So Strezov Sampling is most known for its choir libraries. They have a couple, actually now have about 5 different libraries, and they're coming out with some more over the summer, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I'll have a lot of fun doing that. But Strezov is really known for its Eastern sound, its Eastern libraries, which really separates them from the pack of most sample libraries, which really focus on the Hollywood, bigger than life, epic orchestral sound. So many of you probably already have a lot of libraries with strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion that really give you that huge sound. But really what separates Strezov from the rest of the pack is that they focus on the ethnic sound, that Eastern sound. And today we're going to be specifically looking at the JADE Ethnic Orchestra. And I'm excited to take a look at this because there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. So if you go to the website, link in the description below. The JADE Ethnic Orchestra is it's just stocked full of some really cool stuff. Now, this is a Chinese library. So what that means is instead of your traditional strings, percussion, brass, woodwinds, it focuses 100% on the ensemble sounds of putting these instruments together. So what that means is ethnic strings. It's going to be your bowed strings, your plucked strings, but it's also going to be a Chinese choir, which you don't find this stuff anywhere else. It's going to have your, let me scroll down here, your bowed strings, plucked strings, your vocals, your woodwinds, which are super interesting. Probably the most recognized here is the shakuhachi flute. We hear that in movies all the time. And then, of course, percussion. And they even throw in a really cool sound design pad, which has a ton of patches inside of it. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to take a bit of a deep dive into what this library is and why you might want to consider adding it to your arsenal. So a quick little disclaimer off the top here. While I am not a paid sponsor for Strezov Sampling, they did send me a free copy of JADE Ethnic Orchestra to review it and to share it with you guys. And so I say that because I don't have a bias towards this library. However, this is something that is sorely missing in my palette. Because like I mentioned earlier, I have a ton of libraries across the board that really take care of that big Hollywood sound and even the small Hollywood sound. But something that's really been missing in my arsenal is this Eastern sound. And I don't know of any other library that touches this specific niche, which is the Chinese ethnic sound. So for those of you familiar with Joe Hisaishi of the Studio Ghibli series, that's probably the most Americanized and westernized sound of the Eastern music. So it's like writing harmonically like Western music, film scores, but using the Eastern instruments. And I think this is going to open up a box for a lot of us. It's going to inspire us to write different styles of music just because we're using different instruments that have a different tonality. So let's do a deep dive into what the instruments are, and then we're going to actually write a live piece of music, as I do with all of my sample library reviews. So stick around to the end, or if you just want to skip ahead, if you're watching the replay of this, check out the description below and even the pinned comment in the comment sections. I always put the final track that you can listen to if you just want to jump ahead. But let's take a look at the interface. So I just have a blank session here. I am inside Cubase. And if we just open up a blank contact instrument, you'll notice that it's a Native Instruments contact patch. So it's installed over here on the libraries panel. And these are the different folders we have to work with. So we have bowed string ensembles. We have essentially, if you were to take the normal orchestra that we know, the string orchestra, where we normally have violins, violas, cellos, and basses, that's essentially what they've done. They've just used the Chinese equivalents. So I believe I have this correct, where we have the erhus on top. It's the tiny little violin looking things. And then we have the morin kur, the bass morin kur, which is the bass instrument, and then the zongu. I believe the zongus are the viola equivalent. And essentially they have the same basic ranges as you'd find in an orchestra. And I think the whole purpose of this library is to give Western audiences the opportunity to use Eastern sounds, but to still compose in a Western style. So I just plopped these things together to create this cool little patch. And it sounds so good. And there's a lot of cool stuff we can do here. Now, I appreciate that they've already gone through and they've separated the patches out into 3 different articulations. So we have sustained and then tremolos if we use the mod wheel to go to the top range. But we also have shorts, which are your staccatos, and pizzicato. So if I were to just empty out this little multi that I built, I'll just pull up one of these instruments, such as the erhu. That's probably the most famous Chinese instrument of all. And this is an ensemble. This is not solos. These are all put together. So if I were to grab, let's just say, the sustain and tremolo patch, probably one that you guys will be using a lot. You'll notice that if I pop open my screen here, how when I play with the mod wheel, if I just hold a note, you can hear it's kind of a smaller patch. But such a beautiful legato sound. So you'll notice that the mod wheel is shifting between 2 different patches. We have a softer one on the bottom. You can barely hear it. But then as soon as we jack up the mod wheel, it's a lot more intense of a sound. So there's a lot of parameters in here, and you could right click any one of these as you can with any contact instrument, and you can learn the MIDI CC automation, and then you could move something like a mod wheel or any of the buttons if you have a MIDI controller like my Axiom here. And you can assign those to different parameters. That way, while you're playing, you can adjust them. But I'm happy with the sound right out of the box. I like that they have 3 different mics, a close mic, Decca mic, and a hall mic. That way you can play around with them. So if you just want the closest, authentic, raw, let's turn the close mics on. Let's take off all of the reverb and stuff. I think it's a really good sound. So you might compare that to, let's say, the pizzicato erhus. And I love that they have 2 different erhu ensembles, as if one's not enough. I think it's really, really, really cool. And yeah, we have the 4 different string ensemble as we'd expect with any orchestra. They're just obviously different instruments. And then the same is true with the bowed strings solo. So we have those same instruments we already mentioned, but we also have a few others in here, like the banhu. And this is really where I think this library shines, is it just gives us the full breadth, the full width of all these different ensembles. Such a, an interesting, cool sound. Now, again, most of these patches as solos, these are not overly produced patches. You're going to have to do some work here to get it to fit within your orchestra. But that's the thin, stringy sound that we come to expect. Because if you see these instruments in real life, they have like 2 or 3 strings, sometimes 1 string. You're not going to get this huge instrument sound. Because if you consider that, you know, a cello or a violin that we're so used to in Western music, it has a body, right? It has a wooden hollowed out body to resonate all of the vibrations from the string. So when you do that, when it's resonating, it's going to create and produce this monstrously loud sound. But you compare that to one of these string instruments that there is no body. So the string, like they're having to get these microphones like right in front of the instrument to get any kind of loud sound. So that's usually why Chinese and Eastern music is very, very intimate and small, and you don't want a ton of instruments. But this is just an interesting idea to make an ensemble out of them. But that's why these solo instruments are so thin, because you really need like 15 of these to even hear them in a room. So anyway, just a ton of really cool instruments inside here. So let's take a look at some more. I don't have time to go through all of them, and there are If you are interested in checking out every single articulation, you can go to the Strezov Sampling website. They have a ton of YouTube videos on there where they've already gone through every single articulation, but I'm just going to give you a basic overview here. And a quick little tip while I'm playing here today. If you want to sound like Chinese music, you don't have to do this, but just a really quick shortcut is to play a pentatonic scale, which is 5 notes. If you are not a keyboardist, and you really don't want to think about it, just play black notes. So you'll notice over here as I'm just kind of doodling around. Just kind of instantly creates a pentatonic sound. So that's what I'm doing here today, just to kind of shortcut get some interesting melodies there. Let's pick on one more. They all have the same programming, so if you like one of these, you're going to like them all. This is the expressive erhu. Just means that there's a lot more vibrato in the patch. I love that they kept all like the little, they're not key clicks necessarily, but they're like all the little bow grit and stuff. They kept that in the patch, so it's so interesting to me. But there's a lot of cool things in here. I've never had these patches. The closest thing to this that I know of is the UVI World Suite. I've talked about that before in my live streams and in my sample reviews. And to date, that has been kind of the only place to find a lot of these ethnic instruments. But they're all solos. So this idea of having an ensemble of these is really powerful. And I can't wait to start writing with some of these. The pad engine is only one patch. However, it has 2 different categories, sci-fi and fantasy. I love that so much. So you can tell who their target audience here is. But what they've done is this guy, Goshev, has gone through and taken the patches that we've already played through, and he's created these massive multis that are only meant to be played 1 note at a time, like that. So it's just creating a cool atmosphere. That one's called the Great Wall. This alone might even be worth the whole purchase, because you can write an entire track on top of this. And the coolest part is it is tempo synced. So if I turn my click on in my DAW, it's gonna match the 4/4 time count. Here's another one. And that's so cool. I think that's amazing. Let's hear a couple sci-fi ones. Post-apocalyptical. That's gonna be so much fun to play with. That sounds like Tomb Raider to me. Take that and add some like erhus and some shakuhachi flute or something, just to kind of add these melodic textures and harmonies on top. It's not gonna take a lot of work to write something interesting. Let's take a look at the other instrument sections here. So that's pads. Percussion is actually one patch as well. It's their X3M engine. They have a free version of this, by the way, if you want to go to the website and check out. Let's pop over there just to show you what I'm talking about. They do have, I recommend all of you go grab these right now, regardless of if you want to purchase the pack or not. But they have a freebies section, and each of these is really fantastic. They have a Duduk, which is fantastic. They have the Thunder X3M, which is like a smaller version. It's just the taiko drums, but it's a smaller, light version of this percussion engine that I'm showing you. And then the Shao is actually directly from the JADE Ethnic Orchestra. So that one also sounds amazing. It's just a solo instrument. Sounds like an erhu, but a little bit thinner. So that's something that I highly recommend you guys go grab right now. But yeah, this is like the full version, obviously, the X3M percussion, and you can go through here and create your own zones. I don't want to get too much into it, but the colors just indicate the different instruments that we have to play with. So like the big taikos. turn off my microphone so you don't hear my fingers smack. So it's a really powerful engine, and I particularly love how they are not trying to sell a giant, massive, epic sound, something that you might find from Damage or the Palette, not the Palette, but the Red Room Audio Percussion Saga. There's a lot of instrument packs out there, a lot of libraries that focus on this giant sound. There's a lot of Hans Zimmer percussion instruments. Spitfire does that. But instead, it's just authentic ethnic instruments. And it just has a beautiful small sound. So that small sound would sound so good if we just have a few little solo instruments playing. And I think that's what they're going for here. They're not really trying to do anything groundbreaking. They're just trying to represent the Chinese music, the zeitgeist of what that music is, and help us as Westerners bridge the gap. And that makes me so excited. I just love good, authentic libraries that it's not trying to be something it's not. And that's why I believe they only did one patch, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Let's keep going. So percussion is really not the strong suit of this library, but I like that they included it. Plucked strings is obviously a huge part of Chinese music. Let's just take a look at, let's take the pipa. I can already tell I'm going to want to use some of these chords patches. I think this is brilliant programming because they had the musician play a chord. So if you are not someone who is familiar with chordal harmony, chordal meaning four, it is the Eastern harmonic language. Western harmonic language is based on thirds, tertiary harmony, and fifths, quintal harmony. So what that means is we as Westerners will base our chords around like a C major chord, a C, E, G. But in the Eastern style, they'll do a C and an F, which is chordal harmony, fourths. That's a completely different way of writing music, and it creates the pentatonic scale. And if you don't want to get into the theory behind that, or you just don't naturally think that way, I certainly don't, using a patch like this, these chord patches, it instantly puts us into the mindset of doing this. And I just love this. So I'm just playing one note, but that's a fourth. I would never write that, but because I have the harmony on top, it forces me to. And I can use my mod wheel. Isn't that cool? That's so interesting to me. And I could write so many cool harmonies around that. Quick question in the live chat, by all means, please keep asking questions. I love you guys hanging out with me here. Eric asks, did you try East-West Silk? I have tried Silk before. I've tried all the East-West libraries. Not a big fan of Composer Cloud. I talk about that all the time on my channel here. Mainly because I don't think any of their libraries are great. I think they're all okay, but I don't like okay libraries. I'd rather spend my money on having the best of a specific thing and then focus on that thing. So I feel like Jade in this instance is really killing it with the Eastern style. I feel like Silk is very watered down. It's not very playable. They're not very legato patches. It's not inspiring to me. You asked my opinion, and there it is. But I think these chord patches are going to be really special. Let's try I don't know what this instrument is, the Leakin. I'm gonna get an education in Chinese music just by using this library. that's gorgeous. That'd be so beautiful with like some orchestral strings, Western strings. Yeah, da, 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 da. So I think it's going to be very, very inspiring. That so far is the most inspiring part of this library that I've played around with. Let's skip voices for a second. Let's go to woodwinds, because woodwinds are another staple of the Eastern sound. You expect this, right? But I love how it's consistent across the board, how they have each of these divided into short, long, and looks like in this specific library folder, they're only legato or staccato. The ensembles had the third patch of the sustained tremolo and the pizzicato. Because you can't do pizzicato with woodwinds. But I love how it's just short and long, very simple. But the halusi, let's check it out. Sounds amazing to me. Let's just grab a few more just for fun. This is the sheng leg. I don't even know what this is. It's very quiet. But they even went to the extent of giving us like alto versus soprano versus tenor versions of these. So this is like the equivalent of Cinewinds, Cinesamples, but with all Chinese woodwinds. It's like every possible instrument that you'd want. And since you guys were asking about the freebie, here's the shao that you would get in the just this one instrument patch. You get from the free one. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh my gosh. So this is just so easy to stack stuff. So you can make your own woodwind ensemble. So if that's kind of a fluty high range instrument, let's get a dizzy, an alto flute. Create a multi. Let's get a soprano flute. Let's get a piccolo flute. Swana. I don't know what that is. Oh, I got the wrong one. I got the staccato one. Glad to know the staccatos sound good. Here's the sustain. Holy Chinese. It's like a bagpipe. Good Lord. But hey, sometimes you need that. I wouldn't pair it with other things though. Let's try the dizzy piccolo. There it is. Yeah, that's going to be really, really cool. So you can play around with these all day. And by all means, if you want to hear every articulation, go to their page and listen to all of them. But I also wanted to just take a moment to talk about the voices, because Strezov Sampling is actually most known for its choir libraries. I just want to take a quick moment to show you what they have, because I will be doing some more reviews later this year as they continue to release some more libraries. But they're most known for Storm Choir Ultimate, the Freya female choir, and the Wotan male choir. They have a few others in there, but that's really what they've got onto the map over the last several years from. And they're all ethnic choirs, and they all sound incredible. They're expensive, and they're worth it. And I'll give some reviews on those later. I have not personally gone into the route of ethnic choirs, but I think it's like a secondary quest you can go on once you've established, okay, I have a really good all-purpose American style Western choir, which I have those. I find Requiem by 8DO, and what's the other one by, I'm drawing a blank. What is it? There's a few that I like, and I'm going to pull them up just because we're talking about it. It's worth it. It's worth talking about. If I go to orchestral choir, yeah, okay, so the Ensoladus choir by 8DO is really solid. The Tutti Vox choir is like an effects choir from Soda Kinetic, and then Sound Iron's Requiem Light is also very solid. So there's just different choirs for different purposes, but I've never really doved into the ethnic choir world. But I just think it's really cool that they have some really, really interesting choirs here that I don't think anyone is going to see coming. So just check this out. This is so weird and so interesting, though, because it's so Chinese. Okay. I don't think any other library has that. It's so offensive and beautiful all at the same time. Here's a solo. So this reminds me of like Tuvan throat singers. So it's not supposed to be beautiful. It's just supposed to be ethnic. I think it's interesting. They also have the syllable builders for these different patches. So those are the min ones. You can build your own. I gotta say, as weird as this is, I'm just glad it's not Latin. I'm so tired of Latin phrase libraries. These are Chinese syllables. Basses are killer. Okay, great comment in the live chat by Gnome Magician, who says, would it be better to play this in quarter steps with the voices? Heck yeah, by all means do it. And you can actually do that really easily within Contact by just going over to the pitch. So right here, the tune, you can actually type in a percentage, like 0.15, 15% sharp. Now, of course, if you really want to get fancy, you can use the pitch bend. Okay, I'm not the greatest at doing quarter steps, but what I'm doing is I'm like shifting my mod wheel or my pitch bend wheel by only half of a pitch. You could play around with that by all means. Another one in here is the Mongolian Long Song Quartet. Let's do the syllable builders. This is a women quartet. So interesting to me. Let's look at probably the most usable. They're all usable, but to me in a Western context, probably just an ah. I love that they got the warbles. So take it for what it's worth. There's some cool stuff in here. So what I want to do moving forward, let's write some music. Let's just go for it. Now, again, I am going to write in a Western style because that's what I do as a composer when I'm working on film, TV, video games, and podcasts. But what I'm most interested in here with a library like this, in my world, this may not be your world exactly, but in my world, I do a lot of ethnic music for fantasy audio dramas, which are podcasts. I work a lot with shows that are based literally in China, or they're based in Iceland or these other countries that have a very different ethnic sound. And so I find myself pretty often hiring people from around the world with weird instruments. And I just think this is a really cool way to create an ensemble sound in a specifically Chinese sound. It's very niche, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, let's do it. Let's jump in. So first thing I'm going to do is I was very inspired by the pad. So let's grab that. I'm just going to call this Jade pad. Let's find one that is pretty inspiring. Again, this is just one patch, and you can call it cheating if you want, whatever. It's a bed. Let's do fantasy. That's more of my style than sci-fi. I loved the wall. That's what dragon is. Do D minor. Because that's also my style. I like to mix culturally, harmonically, but also like to mix electronic with orchestral. So this is going to be a cool best of both worlds situation. So that's going to be our pad. Let's put it in. 4 beats. So I'm going to give it about 8 bars before I repeat it. That's a cool bed. And I love that Demo in the chat says, cheating is the picture of efficiency in composing. I should write that quote down. That's good. And I don't even know if this patch is meant to be pitched this low, but who cares? It works. Whenever you do any kind of patch that uses a phrase, Sonar Kinetic does this with a lot of their libraries. You see me talk about them a lot. Just make sure it's quantized. That way when you copy and paste it over, you keep the integrity of the starting and ending of the samples. And again, that alone is probably worth it, just to have those really cool preset. Let's grab some of these strings. I have to use an erhu because that's my favorite Chinese instrument that I know of to date. But I want to do the erhu ensemble because that just warms my heart that this even exists. Cool. Now, I told you this before, if you've been watching the whole video so far, that of all of the ensembles, they chose to do the erhu twice. Like 2 totally different recordings and different ensemble. I don't really know what the exact differences are because they're programmed the same. But I'm going to be the guy who does both at the same time. It makes my own multi. So now I just have 30 erhus. I think that's amazing. Let me purge my samples because it's taking up a lot of RAM right now. So purge all samples, and now it'll only load the exact notes that I play. Gorgeous. I don't even want to add reverb. I might eventually, but this is going to be the erhu ensemble. Again, if you fell asleep for a second, I'm actually combining erhu 1 and erhu 2 ensembles. It's both sustained patches because I couldn't choose between them, so I just said, okay, let's do both. So something you should know about me and my writing style, which I recently learned what the heck the term is. I didn't even know this was a thing. Apparently, I write harmonically in the octatonic scale. I'm not going to get into the theory behind that. If you want to look it up, go look it up. There's a lot of cool YouTube videos about it. But essentially, when I write music, I play let's say we're in the D minor scale. That would be the D minor scale, right? D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D. I never knew this, but I naturally write in the octatonic scale, which is where instead of doing minor, major, 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 minor, major, major, which is a typical minor scale, I actually do minor, major, minor, major, minor, major, minor, major. So what that means is I'm actually taking the minor scale and I'm only using half of a minor scale and half of a major scale. And what it does is it creates weird harmonies that are half step related. They're chromatic. So it's a type of chromaticism, but it's just the way that I write music. So you probably heard the little melody that I wrote. It sounds Eastern because octatonic scales are used in Eastern music a lot. So instead of that's kind of outlining a D minor scale, right? A D minor triad. Remember, triads are Western. So if you want to get an Eastern sound, try the octatonic scale. So it uses a minor half step. So here's what the scale actually sounds like. Weird scale, huh? So with that, I can make really cool melodies like this. Yeah, that's good. And if I just have a D pad or a D drone in the bass, which is what that cool pad is for, now I can write some cool music. I am going to change the tempo in my session, however, because right now it's a little fast. Let's make it, I don't know, 80? Let's see what that sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. What I'm thinking of right now in my head is like a main title theme, something that's about 30 seconds long. Those are easy to do in a short sitting like this. So let's do that together. So the Erhu ensemble will be perfect. Here we go. Maybe a little too notey, but I think it's a good place to start. I'm just going to quantize all those quarter notes. Let's also go into the percussion territory here. That's a cool beat. It's very Chinese, or at least Chinese instrument. And that's probably the best part about this is I can cheat. It's not cheating, but it's I can write an American or a Western drum beat, but because I'm using ethnic percussion, it kind of tricks our brains that it works, even though it could be total sacrilege. But that's okay, because that's why samples like this exist in the first place. Nathan in the chat says some of the attacks are very sharp on here. Can something be done about that? Yes, you can manipulate every single one of these patches with under the hood with in contact if you want to adjust. let me get my drum beat in and then I'll address that. And I'll show you a couple of techniques that we can do to make these a little bit more malleable. So let's play first. So here is the percussion patch. Let's pop it in. That's gonna be cool. Cool. That's actually a great place to stop the minute-long track. And that's pretty normal hire as a composer. If you're someone who writes themes, main themes for TV shows or for podcasts, that's a very common request. Like a 1 minute show intro, a piece of music. And so that 1 minute track can be chopped up into multiple versions. So at the very end of this, once I exported it and gave it to the client, I could chop this, obviously have a 1 minute version, but also chop it into maybe just a 10 second stinger, or make it a 30 second, make it 15 seconds, whatever. I can make multiple versions using the data. I can have a little bit of intro without the melody. I could have a version with and without the melody. I could have different stems. There's a lot of ways that you can deliver this stuff, but this is a really easy way to do it with a library like this. So I think it's pretty cool, and I can see myself using this quite a bit, especially with my fantasy audio dramas, because this is right in the lane there. Okay, so to address Nathan's question in the chat, who once again, he said some of the attacks are very sharp. Can something be done about that? So let's do it. Let's go inside that Erhu ensemble patch. Let's go under the hood. To my knowledge, I don't think there's anything on the actual script interface right in front of us that allows us to adjust the ASDR. That's usually something you have to do inside the interface itself. So let's do that. Let's go down to modulation, and there it is. So I can take the attack. Let's just solo that 1 patch. And then we can take the attack and drag it out. And the way that we can do that is go to the grouping editor, make sure that everything is selected, edit all groups before we make a change. That way, when we do something with the attack or otherwise, like down here, it's going to affect everything. It's like only a couple. Seems like just the starting notes are like that. Yeah. I'm not a super wizard back here, but that's how I would do it. I was just playing all these settings. That helps a little bit. And then we can do the same thing with the second Erhu, which is really the problem. Same thing, go to modulation, make sure that edit all groups is on. Now I will show you one more a little secret tip here. If you still don't like how legato it is, or lack thereof, you can always go to the script editor with any of these patches. You can go to the empty. Don't mess with the actual interface itself, but go to empty, go to preset, factory. Let's see if they have it. There's usually a portamento. I don't know why it's not there. That's bizarre. I wonder if it's because it's an ensemble patch. That's usually there. I don't know if it's hiding in here, but there you can use any of the preset. There it is. Performance unisono portamento. That's what I was looking for. Boom. Go to mode on for mono, and now that I could change the portamento to be like 5. So you can play around with that. That's probably more useful in a solo woodwind or solo string type setting. I don't know if it's worth going through all that trouble. So let's get rid of that. But that's just one way that you can do it. You can always go back to empty if you don't like it. And you can go back to what you're doing. So the default way to deal with that is to use the mod wheel and to make the mod wheel less. You can ride it a little bit better that way. But anyway, let's get back to it. Let's make ourselves a cool trip. Let's have a good trip making a good track. That could almost be its own track, just like that. Let's do some winds. Let's find something that might feel right in this context. So let's go into the winds. I'm not going to use all the patches. There's no purpose. Let's grab something maybe in the alto range. Sounds like a saxophone. No, I don't need anything like that. It's like an oboe. Pretty cool. I'm looking more for like a flute sound. So here's the dizzy again. Let's do the shell. I love how the vibrato is so strong that it's adding like that woody. Such a cool recording. I know I've written a kind of drony piece here. Kind of works all by itself. I'm not sure it even needs any of that. But of course, you can experiment wherever you want to. I see myself using this library most in conjunction with what I already write. I'm not just going to go ahead and like forsake all of my ways as a Western composer and try to write authentic Eastern music. That doesn't make any sense for me as a composer. But instead, I'm going to take things like piano, which normally don't really go together with that. But I'm going to do my thing. You know, I'm going to use the tone colors that come. I freaking love erhus. And I think that alone, like, that's what sells me on this whole thing, is having ensembles of instruments we know and love from, you know, Studio Ghibli or whatever, that are obviously westernized. But even just taking a nice fat piano like keyscape, you know, slapping like the B2 from 2C Audio, which is a really fabulous EQ/reverb, and doing something that maybe has an interesting flavor to it. Isn't that cool? So cool. It literally like creates a reverse out of the reverb, but using that like as an effect, as part of the soundscape, that would be cool. And Demo, that's a good, in the live chat, Demo suggests using some plucked strings. I think that would help as well to create some background ambience. So let's do that after we get this cool piano reverse thing. Cool sound. I've never used that particular preset before, but that's really cool. I'm gonna make all of those dead on the beat. That way it has the reverb effect. It sounds like a brass blast 10 miles away. I'm going to throw the erhu ensemble into a really cool reverb as well. This is totally in my wheelhouse, because fantasy audio dramas typically have some sort of time component, like they're in the future, they're in the past, or they're like an alternate future. So this almost feels like it's been thousands of years in Imperial China since then, right? And we're in the future, but there's like this sci-fi component. So I think doing cool effects on top of what already sounds really good is a nice way to add some flavor to what you do. So let's grab some plucked strings. Let's go into what we have here. There's a lot of good stuff. I did say I was going to do it, so let's use some of these chords. I think I've loaded the Senshan. Ooh, that's interesting, because the interval is actually it's a detuned fourth. You hear that? Almost sounds like a guitar. play around for a minute. Let's find maybe I'm just gonna pick something that has interesting chords. Here's the Daron, or the Daron. I could see writing a Final Fantasy track. That'd be a good village theme with a woodwind. It doesn't fit the track I'm currently writing. So I see myself using this a whole lot more. Like, this is going to be an interesting way to help me get some ethnic influence into my writing in a very organic way without having to actually write in that style, you know? That's interesting. I don't know what I like the best. I haven't found what I like just yet. Here's the Zongron. Probably a big one. I'm trying to get away from the guitar type sound. I might just stick with the pipa. That's what I started the stream with, I think. That's super ethnic to me. Reminds me of a koto. And it's already in a pentatonic vibe because then the harmony. Okay, air hoos, they sound cool, but they're like swimming. It's a little much. Let's keep using the plucked strings, but I want to do something with delay on them. Let's just grab a stereo delay, basic patch, and do a little bouncy. Welcome to the chat, Carlos. That's cool. It needs a little bit of love, but let's put it in. It's a cool little ostinato. See, that's just the way my brain works. I'm not going to write an authentic, beautiful staccato line. That's just not my thing. I like to use instruments as tone colors. So in this instance, just 16th note, little ostinato. What's up, Chris? Welcome to the stream. I have to give a quick shout out for anyone who does not follow Christopher Siu on his YouTube channel. Go check it out right now. Go sub to his channel. He does a lot of sample library view reviews as well. Good guy. Good guy. Back to the stream. granted, I'm basically treating the pipa, is that what I chose? The pipa chords. I'm basically treating them like a synth because I'm doing a filter sweep and I'm putting delay on them, but that's okay because the source material is still an authentic Chinese instrument. So subconsciously, we feel like it fits in the space, even though it's been morphed and messed with. In the same way that I hope you guys would take a cello pizzicato or something. If you want to affect something, don't start with a synthesizer. Start with the source material and then morph it into the space you're trying to create. I think that's a much more authentic way to create interesting music that doesn't sound like what anyone else will do. Like, I don't think anyone else that uses this library is going to do what I do with it, and that's okay. That's the whole point. Sample libraries should be a source of inspiration that help us achieve new things in our music. Yeah, I like the taikos, but to me they need more beef. That's just an EQ issue. But I do appreciate that Strezov Sampling has given us patches here that are very flat, meaning they don't have boosts, they're not produced. They're just good recordings that we as composers and producers can do something with. I hate it when people hand me sample libraries that already have a ton of reverb baked in, or they have EQs and they've boosted the low end, whatever. Just give me a flat sample that I can use in my work. So this is a great example of I can play in the percussion, but now I can take the EQ and I can round it out. As you just saw, I can take the high end, drop it here, but then cut off the ultra highs while boosting the lows, which are the taikos. If I were to just solo that, you can hear how much cleaner, in my opinion, it sounds. Versus if I take it off. Here it is back on. Huge difference. A lot more clarity. But that's just for this mix, because there could be a mix I do tomorrow that doesn't need the big bass boost. So, you know, it just gives lots of flexibility. Moving on. Let's finish this track and call it a day, huh? Let's do another melodic instrument to help add some more flavor to that melody. I like it, and it could work by itself. Let's experiment with some winds here. I don't know what's going to work, but let's just see. That's a cool little drone. Boom. Sounds so good. Now that's with the reverb on. Let me turn it off. Cool. Maybe double that. That's the right sound, wrong range. Really cool sound. I just gotta get one of these higher ranged flutes. Maybe the shao. I keep coming back to it. Let me try the shun. It's like a little ocarina. Cool. Still too low. I might just want a shakuhachi because it's like a piccolo equivalent. You gotta agree that sounds way cooler now with the doubling. That's the note I actually want. I want the A flat to the A, or the G sharp to the A, like a little chromatic. It's super octatonic right there. We should invent a theory term, super octatonic. I don't know what it means, but it's what I do. It's how I write my music, because I'm special. No, I'm not. This is what I do. There it is right there. That's like my signature thing. I don't know why I love it so much, but I just do. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's just something I do a lot in my music harmonically. Instead, let me go on a little rant here, okay? What I don't like in music, probably my biggest pet peeve is when music is predictable. This is why I hate suspended fourths that resolve to a major third. I hate Picardy thirds. I hate anything in classical music that is predictable, 5-1. I do it in my music sometimes because I have to. I say I have to, not really, but there's almost always a more interesting choice. So harmonically, instead of resolving back to the minor one, which we are doing in this situation, we're playing a D minor, the whole thing's a D minor, but instead of going, well, let me show you. Got a keyboard in front of me. Instead of going like a classical back to one, then it's so much more interesting to do like dance around the note. That's just my personal thing. It's very chromatic and it has a darker tonality to it, but that's also the style of music I write. That's the shows that I write. They're usually a little chaotic, a little on the edge. And I think that helps to convey that versus something happy. Let's continue with the same style. I think this will be fun. We haven't changed the chords. Cool, and that would be the end right there. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's exactly 1000, like 1000% on the money. Not even a millisecond off. That's creepy, guys. Creepy. I do this too much. But there you go. There's the loop point. That's my one. It doesn't have to be a loop. It's the 1 minute. I'm just gonna say stop. It's the stop point. Which means right here, I can take my markers. Now, granted, I'm starting on bar 2, which wastes 3 seconds, but it also gives us 2.5 seconds on the back end for reverb tail of dead silence, which clients like. They don't like your track to be like exactly a minute and then you kill the reverb tail and you have a bad track. I'm going to clean out the very first note. I like it. I mean, there's really no need to change the formula. It's working really well. So I'm going to keep the piano going, the drum going, the plucked strings, which are the pipa chords. It might be nice to... I got to get something else with the flute, though. Man, that's my favorite patch. And that's the free one, guys. You guys can go grab that right now for free. Love that. Minor third. Notice the major third. Isn't that weird? There's a flippin' major third hanging out in the background the whole time, and yet because we're kind of dancing around this octatonic scale, it never feels major. Because a major interval or a major third doesn't necessarily have to feel like a major. Oh, there it is. Actually, because there's so much reverb tail, I'm going to extend it all the way until it's actually 1 minute and 3 seconds, which is exactly 1 minute still because we're starting at bar 2. And yes, Demo in the live chat says it's the Phantom Picardy. I think you're totally right about that. It's like the chord we want to resolve to, no, but we never get there because we're dancing on the minor second. Isn't that weird? That's such a cool effect. Totally unplanned. But I hope that this gives a little bit of inspiration and motivation to you guys that, of course, we're talking about JADE Orchestra today, Ethnic Orchestra, but this applies to all sample libraries that if it inspires you, then add it to your arsenal. But if it's something that's just sitting there and it doesn't really push you forward to do anything interesting, why are you using it, you know? And it doesn't mean you need a lot. It just means when you're picking what libraries to use, if it's something that inspires you and really makes you write interesting music, then I think you have a winner. And I definitely feel that way about this today. You guys have seen me do a lot of sample library reviews. Some of them I'm not very enthusiastic about because I try it and I'm like, this is not worth my time. But I think this is interesting and it pushes me forward. And of course, it's used in conjunction with other items such as the B2 reverb by 2C Audio. That's a huge component I'm using today. Pro Q, which is a Fab Filter EQ. Without that, I wouldn't be able to morph these into the way that I want to. So it's a conjunction, right? It's multiple things added together. But anyway, so there is our 1 minute track. I want to do a tiny bit of mixing here. I think you guys have screamed at me enough times over the course of doing this for multiple years on YouTube. A lot of you guys are like, show me how you mixed this. So I'm going to show you how I mix it. Something like this doesn't need a lot. Anyone interested, the Voxingo recorder is just my plugin for letting you hear me right now. So that's just going to sit on its own back there. I always have a limiter, an L1 limiter on my tracks set to -0.1 dB. And for today's purposes, I'm going to use Ozone. Actually, no, I'm not. No, I am not. No, I'm not. Okay, I want to try something different today. I want to use the Kramer tape. This is not something I use all the time, but anytime I want my music to sound like a real orchestra, I will use the Kramer tape. You gotta be very, very subtle with this thing though. It's an artificial noise generator. I want to make sure that we can all hear that. How can we all hear that? There it is. There it is. So what it's doing is it's simulating an orchestral hall. Or like, it's not quite reverb. It's simulating the hiss that you get when you record on tape, on analog. So I like to turn it up so I can hear it and then turn it back down a little bit. And it's just going to sit in the background while we play. So that's something that alone adds so much depth to the sound. Let's listen to it now. Now let's go back to turning it off. Interesting, huh? It just adds some clarity, and even that's a little bit much. Just a little bit. Welcome. Like, to me, this sounds like totally like a podcast, like the intro theme. Welcome to the Imperial March, where we find out what happened last time to our heroes. Whatever. It has that epic fantasy quality, but it's not over the top either. It has a very clear space for VO. And I think that's one of the benefits to using, erhus, Chinese strings, because it's so whiny, it's such a high range. It's not really a lush mid-range instrument like a violin ensemble would be. Okay, so for today, instead of grabbing ozone, which kind of epicifies, if that's a word, makes your stuff sound way bigger. I don't really want it to sound bigger. I want it to sound fuller and richer. So I'm going to grab from Waves. Let's do the API 20. No. I want the EQ. So the 550A. It's a colored EQ. So this actually changes the tone of the sound, not just EQ. I don't want to do a ton. What I want here is to hear that boost, just that alone, how much that changes the sound. I intentionally want this to be after the Kramer tape, so that way it doesn't, I'm not changing a sound that I can't hear. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm going to take the highs. You can tell by HF is high frequency, mid frequency, and low frequency. I want to boost the highs, boost the lows quite a bit. I'm going to subtract. I'm going to take away from the mids a little bit. Let's make sure the analog button is on. Everything else should be pretty solid. Here's what it sounds like with it on. Turn it back off. I'm going to take the bass and turn it back down to 2. It's a little too much. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to open up space. I'm trying to boost the highs and the lows, if this is my EQ, low and high, and then scoop out the mids. It's a nice way of doing that. I'm going to do one more plugin. This is kind of the sister plugin of the API series. This is the compressor. It's the API 2500. Good to do, I should say best to use after the EQ. This is going to help squish everything together, but also keep that same analog sound. I don't need to do a lot. It's not something I want to do a ton of, but let's kind of set it. If we set it to nothing, the ratio is down to 1.5. The threshold is at -20. So just like with any compressor, you want to start with the needles pointing towards one another and then increase both at the same time until you can hear something different. So right now, nothing has happened yet, but I'm going to make sure that we turn the threshold, like the amount, to soft. We don't want this to be like an EDM track. So I'm going to turn both knobs up just a little bit. Here's what it sounds like. So you can already hear how the drums are like, they're choked, right? So let's turn it back down. Try not to do it way too much. That's probably all it needs, to be honest. Let's listen to it again. Okay, so final thing here. What I feel needs to happen is we need to go to the percussion track. Since we bumped it up with the lows, that's what's really peaking right now. And that's okay. What we need to do is compress that whole thing down. So instead of doing the whole track, let's compress just the drums, because they need some help to fit. It's a great sound. So here it is without it, so you can understand how different a compressor can help. So if I turn it off, with it on, helps clean out. Amazing how strong this API is. You should use it very, very liberally, and I feel like even the tiniest amount that I've already put is crushing it too much. So this is the final thing I'm going to do. Okay, so there we go. I had to experiment a little bit to figure out what I liked and didn't like. So what was happening is the drums were taking up so much headroom. If you remember, I put the API 2500 on before putting the compressor on the percussion. So the percussion was actually the treble. And so what I've decided to do is X out the 2500 because it didn't solve the problem, but by putting the Pro C on the percussion track, that did solve that. And so I'm going to leave that out of the chain for the master, and then everything's good to go. I'm happy with every bit of that. Alrighty then. Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of this first look today. I hope you got to learn a little bit more about the JADE Ethnic Orchestra. Make sure you check out the link in the description below if you want to grab that today. It just launched today. time of this recording, May 11th, 2020. So I'm really excited. I got a chance to take a look at this library with you and write a 1-minute track. I think this would work perfectly in a fantasy audio drama, which is the type of podcast that I write for quite frequently. So let's listen to the final track. And if you guys have any suggestions for a track title, I would appreciate that. And I'd love to hear in the comments as well which instrument you are most excited to use with this orchestra. So thanks guys for being a part. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do that and you smash the little bell icon so that you can be notified of more live streams like this. During this season right now, the time of this recording, we're still part of social distancing where we're all kind of stuck at home. I'm doing a lot more live streams than normal. So I'm actually doing these Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays around this lunchtime over here in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's about 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time each of those weekdays. And then Wednesdays, we have produced videos anyway. So you get 5 videos a week. Hope you guys are enjoying those. As always, have a wonderful day. Let's listen to the final track, and I'll see you next time.